Hello, welcome and good morning to the Tech23 Impact Circles. It's wonderful to have you all join us for what's sure to be a great conversation exploring supporting Australian entrepreneurship and understanding the role that universities play. As is custom, I would like to acknowledge both the Gallagher people of the Eora Nation and the Bunwurrung and Wurundjeri peoples of the Kulin Nation, the traditional custodians of the land, where the Slattery's team works, meets and creates. We pay our respects to the elders, both past, present and emerging. We also acknowledge that people are attending today from other traditional lands and nations, and extend our respects to their custodians, ancestors, elders and future leaders. Always was, always will be Aboriginal land. Nice to see you here, Rachel.
Oh, hello, Adina. And I think this is our last circle online. We've got one more tomorrow. So that's, a bittersweet sort of welcome today. I'm delighted to welcome everyone onto the line, and especially today's contributors. Murray Hurps from UTS. We've got David from UNSW, Jess from the University of Queensland, Daizy from Deakin, Rohan from Curtin. Good morning to you, Rohan. It's an early start. Melissa at Macquarie, Dan from RMIT, and Sally from Cicada. Welcome to you, and thank you so much for your time in today's circle. I'm really looking forward to the conversation. One of the best things we've found about Zooming in is the ability to reach people wherever they are. So please say hello, introduce yourselves on the chat now, and tell us where you're Zooming in from. Tech23 has always been about amplifying the people and the organisations helping us chip away at the big challenges we face. So it's really wonderful to have this group today sharing on how they support Australian entrepreneurs. Coming to you any which way this year has been a little bit of a challenge for Tech23. We've been shining a light on 23 companies doing great things for 12 years, and we've just released them this morning. So you can visit the website, have a look at the 23 companies that pretty much represent the great things happening across the country. So congratulations to the 23, and please share and amplify as much as you can their great stories. We've got one face-to-face circle tomorrow, which is wonderful, at the Sydney Startup Hub. And we've also got the long lunch, which I'm looking forward to for those that can actually join us in the flesh in Sydney tomorrow. None of this could be possible without the support of the Tech23 sponsors. So I just want to call out Oz Industry, UNSW, Main Sequence Ventures with CSIRO, New South Wales Government, Macquarie University, Addison's, ANSTO and Cicada Innovations. Thank you. We're so grateful for your support. And again, to all of those on the line, a warm welcome. Please ask your questions on the chat, offer suggestions. We're going to have the mural to capture any takeaways. And after Murray and the contributors share, we'll stop recording and have an opportunity just to have a chat. Please enjoy, and I look forward to talking to you more informally at the end of this. It's great to be connecting, isn't it, Adina?
Indeed. Thank you, Rachel. Now, just a couple of final housekeeping items before we kick off. You would have seen in your reminders and in the Zoom chat now, there's a link to the Slattery's Community Charter, which is a great read if you need guidance on what kind of behaviour is encouraged at the circles. Now, we are using a shared mural board, so we welcome your thoughts to add as you like, stickies, squiggles, drawings, whatever you like. And please ask any live questions via the chat in Zoom, or just put up your hand if you'd like to ask one a bit later on. As Rachel mentioned, we will be recording this presentation and we'll make it available post-event so you can revisit and share later on. We extend our heartfelt gratitude to every one of the Circle contributors and to the Tech23 sponsors and supporters for helping today's session, and indeed all of the sessions, happen and come into being. We also want to thank all of you for dialing in to join us. Now, without any further ado, I'd like to pass on to Murray to kick things off. Thank you.
Thanks very much. And Rachel and Adina, the smiles on your faces. Rachel, when you were talking about this being the second last event, I love the work that you do, but you work very hard and the results are obvious. Thank you very much for bringing this together. We'll run through introductions. Everyone's got 3 minutes to run through a quick overview of what they do. If you go over, I'll start waving, but I think we'll be short and sharp. And I'll just do it in the order that I see it. I'll start with UTS. So at UTS, the program that I run is called UTS Startups, and it's about inspiring and supporting large numbers of entrepreneurs at UTS. So can you take people that don't care about entrepreneurship, show them what it's actually like, show them people like them doing stuff they can do and getting results that they want to get? And can you take people that start and help them continue? We're now at 408 student launched startups that we're supporting that have been started in the last 3 years that we've been running this program. And I spend my whole life saying, look at these wonderful people over here and cheering them on from the sidelines. It's wonderful. But I'll pause there and throw to Melissa, please. Melissa Ryan.
Oh, thanks, Murray. I didn't realise I was next. Hello,
Sorry.
everybody. No, that's fine. You don't need to apologise. I think everyone's screen looks different. I'm currently working at Macquarie. I've joined the team up here probably about 1.5 years ago now. And prior to that, I was with the University of Wollongong. I have been lucky to be in this space now for 10 years in a university context. And prior to that, I was in corporate working for a multitude of evil empires. I got taught lots of tips and tricks and ways of doing business well, and try to instill that in the startups that we support. So I always say that we are the scaffolding and the fertilizer for our startups. So we support them. We provide them with their connections. We give them the right kind of education in the right timing, in the right format, so that they can have practical applied knowledge so that they can grow their startups fast. So that's basically me. Thank you very much.
Beautiful. Jessica.
Hi everyone, so my name is Jess Gallagher and I'm the Pro-Vice-Chancellor of Global Engagement and Entrepreneurship at the University of Queensland. We launched a new entrepreneurship strategy, whole of university strategy, in March 2019, and it's been a really significant period of growth for our teams over that time. Our entrepreneurship activities are under the broad banner of UQ Ventures, which is really focused on building entrepreneurial capabilities and mindsets across our whole community. So for us, it's about how do we provide opportunities for our students, staff, alumni, and external community to build those capabilities, networks, and mindsets to enable them to be innovators, either in existing organisations or to create new ones. And so for us, we have a really broad range of activities, from early ideation programs to market validation to startup acceleration, and then even to business incubation. So a very global program because we have the benefit of having our global strategy and our entrepreneurships together. So a lot of key international and industry partners. What I'm really proud about is the fact that we've grown our participation levels from just over 1,700 in 2017 to close to 13,000 this year. And that's with all the COVID disruption. So have an absolutely amazing team that are doing all kinds of incredible things around diversity, partnerships, and really broadening understanding about the benefits of entrepreneurship at UQ.
Incredible. Daizy.
Thanks. Yeah, I'm Daizy. I'm out here in Geelong at the moment, which is where I operate Spark Deakin University's entrepreneurship program. We're mainly usually based in the city in Melbourne, but during lockdown have been working from home. I've been with the university for 5 years now. Spark was founded by Professor Sveta Venkatesh, who's one of the top artificial intelligence scientists in the world, actually. And it's sort of her baby, and I've adopted it and raised it over the last 5 years. And it's been a great journey as we've grown and added programs. Our focus has been lately integrating some of the offerings we have with existing degree programs as well, and making sure we have something that suits people that just want to dip their toe in to see if entrepreneurship is for them versus they want to dive completely into Activator, where we provide funding, support, mentorship. I think one thing that we're really focused on is providing the right introductions to the right people at the right time, which is very challenging because you don't know when you need to be introduced to a certain time, whether you're looking for money or whether you're looking for advice. I think timing is a critical factor, as well as the right people. So we spend a lot of our time building up those relationships with industry, and we have 100+ I don't like to call it industry partnerships, but that's university language. But we have 100+ sort of startup partners, incubators, other accelerators that provide more funding for equity that are venture backed, venture capital funds. So we have a lot of partnership with startup industry.
Beautiful. Thank you, Dan.
Hello, everyone. My name is Dan from RMIT Activator. So I'm calling in from Queensland, usually based in Melbourne, but have escaped the city, as many people have. Looking forward to being back there next year, though, and seeing kind of RMIT and Activator continue to thrive. It's really great to be here, even in the first few minutes just before this session in the prep, just talking to everyone on this call. Who's speaking, and it's really clear to me that there's some really intelligent and creative, experienced people working in the space. So it's really great to see. It's been a tough year at RMIT, as it has been in many universities. So I'm really proud to say that that Activator is really thriving, and we're looking forward to next year. So a couple of things that we do and what our main focus is on. Our main focus, I guess, is supporting very, very early stage startups to learn, grow, and thrive. So we work at that very kind of founder fundamentals stage in the journey, and we support those early stage startups to get off the ground. It's really, really great to see, and really proud to see Esper as one of the startups or one of the companies in the Tech23 group there. So really great to see that company is moving forward as well. And the other key thing that we do, which is what we've expanded on this year and what we'll continue to expand on, is supporting students and other RMIT stakeholders to develop contemporary enterprise capabilities. So Activator started more as a kind of a standard pre-accelerator or accelerator program. And in the last few years, we've really kind of gone down this path of thinking more broadly about entrepreneurship, not just startups, but thinking about capabilities and talent as well. And so very quickly for 2021, and happy to talk more about this as well, we're expanding our work integrated learning program in startups, so supporting students to get experience into our startups. And because we have so many in our alumni network now, it's a great kind of circular process and circular environment for us to provide great learning experiences for students. Connecting more into academic areas, kind of as Daisy's mentioned there, we're doing similar things around how do we, work into our degree programs. And also kind of taking what we've learnt this year from our digital delivery and adding to our, adding the physical resources we have at RMIT to that, and seeing how we can, create an even better incubation environment. So that's a really exciting opportunity for 2021, taking what we've learnt this year and moving forward in a really nice hybrid environment. That's all from me. Happy to chat more in the question and answer session. Thanks very much for having me here.
Beautiful. Thank you. Rohan.
Good morning, everybody. Great to see you all this morning, and good to join this conversation. So I am the Director of Commercialisation here at Curtin University, and our primary focus is on commercialising technology out of the university, but we've identified there's common elements in developing a culture of entrepreneurship across the university too. So what you need for both of those things is capability, so an understanding of what makes a viable business proposition, access to capital, both human capital and finance, and a good community that a number of the other speakers have talked about that you can tap into for the right level of input and expertise at the right time of the journey. So we run a bunch of programs that are really a stepwise level of support for teams wanting to embark on an entrepreneurial journey. It starts with trying to develop a culture of entrepreneurship through an innovation awards program, where people are recognised for new ideas, for new products and services, early stage capability, a program called Ignition that's run by Business Law here, which is about business concept development. If things are looking prospective from there, we put people into a more detailed accelerator program, which is structured mentoring and a little bit of seed funding. National entrepreneurs and investors to come to Perth every year, so local entrepreneurs and investors, local entrepreneurs can connect with those global networks, and we've built on that with joining up to Extreme Tech Challenge this year, which is a global competition for startups to connect into Fortune 500 companies and some of the world's leading VCs. We ran West Tech Fest just last week, and I suppose the thing we're proud of this year is we were fortunate enough to be able to meet in person over at Righto and in Perth, and it just reminds you of how great it is to actually connect rather than do these things via Zoom, which are also good. And kudos to Rachel and team for what must have been a really horrific year for a group that's working primarily on face-to-face events normally. The way you've adapted this year and still got some good primary amount. Congratulations for that.
Thank you, Rohan. And I'll also point to the room of really polite people that we lost 5 seconds of audio there. And everyone was busy thinking it was their own problem instead of yours.
Oops, sorry.
But very polite people in the room. Also, no faith in my own technology. Sally, take it away, and then David, please.
Awesome. So thanks. So I'm Sally Ann Williams, the CEO of Cicada Innovations. I am not a university or based at a university, but I am owned by 4 universities, ANU, UNSW, UCID and UTS. We are Australia's oldest deep tech incubator. We've been around 20 years. If you want to hear all about us, please just check out the website at cicadainnovations.com and look out for our report that we put out in August, Australia's Deep Tech Future, lessons from the Cicada Innovations story. We exist to support and nurture deep tech companies for the long haul. So some of our residents have been here 10 years or longer. We work on things like medtech, ag, food, energy, modern slavery, device, hardware, software, anything that's IP driven and founded in science and engineering. And we were created at a time when actually most of the work that we're all here representing didn't exist in Australia. So it was quite visionary when we were created. And I'd like to think that, maybe we inspired Rachel at some point in our history to do Tech23, which was very visionary when that was launched as well. Our whole focus, though, is supporting these businesses, and there's at least 40 to 60 resident at any given time. It's to support them and their 450 odd employees to grow and become commercially viable, raise venture capital, and actually move out into the building and thrive and survive. We've had hundreds of millions of dollars of exits. We have hundreds of millions of dollars of grants and venture capital raised. Really, really successful, but we understand the struggle is real and the challenges are really hard. I think one of the things that's really different about us is the way that we interact with universities. So while we're owned by universities, we're an independent company. And so we work very broadly and very consultatively with anybody. And most people would assume that we are ongoing funded by the universities and that all of our companies here are spin-outs from the universities. And actually both those two things would be factually incorrect. At the moment, only one of our residents is a direct spin-out from a university, but every single resident here engages with universities on multiple fronts. And so when I think about how we think about entrepreneurship and the role of universities, it's actually more than accelerator programs and more than what we do on campus. It's actually how we do commercialization, and we do contract research with the companies in here. It's about the pipeline of talent into this place, 450 STEM professionals every year and growing, and we're 100% full right now. So those linkages with universities, with our shareholders for certain, but also beyond that, they're globally with universities around the world. And it's really about connecting the best and the brightest and the most ambitious people with great ideas and great opportunities and what it is that they need to succeed. So I'm excited about being here and having this conversation, and maybe, we can broaden the way that we actually participate, the way that we connect, and the way that we can collaborate, because I think sometimes we do sort of limit ourselves to the things that we're doing, and yet there's so much opportunity. And in coming out of, this situation and this year of COVID, I think the recovery that this nation needs is going to be led by deep tech entrepreneurship. It's going to be led by organizations finding a home in research and development and really commercializing new things and bringing it to market. And we certainly need greater connection and collaboration to do that. So very excited to come together and see how we can do more for community and for country.
Cool. And the right place to be doing it. No, let's kick it off here. David, please.
Thanks, Murray. Good morning, everyone. I'm David Burt, Director of Entrepreneurship at UNSW. In terms of how you should think about entrepreneurship at UNSW, it really is an invitation to every single UNSW student, staff member, and alumni to come and be curious about entrepreneurship, to consider if it might be something for them, and to start helping them build the skills and mindset that they'll need if they want to pursue that pathway, want to go on that journey of actually practicing entrepreneurship. And so, you know, that's the first important point, is it really is that broad mandate across the university. And it's really fantastic that we've got support of the Vice-Chancellor in doing that. It was really great. Super proud that in his sort of end of year address, specifically calling out the number of startups from UNSW that would actually support it in the year. In terms of how we actually work with those people, we try to take them on that journey from first sort of that curiosity around what is entrepreneurship, is this something for me, through to when they have an actual idea, helping them stress test it. Is it something they really want to run with? Is there enough evidence to actually pursue that? All the way through to where we would sort of help them start the company and grow it. And we'll actually sort of invest capital in a few of them as well, would be the first seed investor into that company. And so that's really the population of people we look to help, and the way in which we look to help them. And, you know, as I think forward to 2021, we've got great momentum. You know, we've helped thousands of people from the UNSW community this year, hundreds of startups. So we're really well positioned for next year. There's one specific thing I wanted to call out that I'm super excited about, which is what we're doing around women's entrepreneurship. But I've also got a great team at UNSW. I see a few of them on the line now, so I'm going to pick on one of them. Tash Jamieson, can you just pop in briefly, tell people what our plans are for New Wave next year?
Sure. So all of us here would know perfectly well that the representation of women in entrepreneurship, be that startups or small businesses or even entrepreneurial programs like the ones we run, is below the national average. So we run the New Wave program, which is an intensive support mechanism designed to meet this underrepresentation and help support it. And this year we helped 116 women go through this program, which has been really great in boosting our percentage of female run companies within our USW program. So we have now 40% of our startups have at least one female co-founder or founder on their team, which is roughly double the Australian average. So we're pretty proud of that.
Awesome. Thanks, Tash. Back to you, Murray.
Beautiful. And I'll also say we've got wonderful people in the audience. Thank you very much, everyone, for joining. Put questions in the chat and I'll refer to the chat and throw those into the mix. But I'll start with one to anyone that's super enthusiastic. Incubators concentrate existing activity. Accelerators concentrate kind of high quality activity of a certain kind. Who is doing the work to create new entrepreneurs in Australia in large numbers, in your opinions?
You mean which organizations in general? And
yeah.
What do you mean?
Who would you point to?
If I think some of these going into schools are really interesting. The organizations going into high schools as well, delivering boot camps and things like that, because I think early days, it's a big shift in mindset to go from looking for just understanding that there's a job you can do, that you can actually have some sort of agency and become an entrepreneur. I think it varies what type of entrepreneur you become in terms of like freelancers or entrepreneurs, right? So I think there's different people doing different work, but I think a lot of these organizations going into schools are doing some really interesting work. I think one was called, that I'm familiar with, Young Change Agents. I did some judging for them and they had about, I think, 30 schools involved, a huge event. They've got Telstra involved too. So I think in terms of creating new entrepreneurs, the folks going into schools. The second is I have to say everyone here with our entrepreneurship programs in the universities, I'd imagine, including ours, we have people who come in who aren't even sure they want to be entrepreneurs. They're curious. They're just, something sparks their curiosity. And usually it's this idea that they can make a difference, that their actions can actually have a result in something. And that sort of perks their curiosity. And they come into our programs, they sort of end up in our funnel of, you know, you come to an event, you come to a boot camp, and then you do work integrated learning. And then maybe at some stage you end up in our accelerator, or you do an internship with a startup. So I think all the university accelerators here are really involved in creating new entrepreneurs as well as organizations and schools.
Just add, I think it's a stepwise process. So you've got to get the mindset, and the earlier the better for that. And high schools are a great place to start. But for real businesses that are going to get real traction, we see early alumni are the most investable propositions that we come across, because they've been out and they've had some experience in the marketplace and they've had some content from their background in the system, and they're young and enthusiastic about putting in the hours required to make a successful business.
Yeah, I would add to that and throw something out a little bit different. Is I actually think that there's two things that are going to create the most entrepreneurs, and I think it's a burning platform and a necessity. And I think the greatest sparks in entrepreneurship we see when we have a recession or we have an economic downturn and there's a need. And so I think all of these people on the call, all of the stuff that's happening in university and campuses, all of the stuff that's happening around commercialisation training outside of university campuses as well. You know, we run the medical device commercialisation training program for New South Wales Health. We've had thousands of people go through that. They're all wonderful, but who actually, you know, when the rubber meets the road, who creates a business that is viable and starts employing people are the thousands of people out there who have to do that because employment isn't an option for them and they can't find jobs. And I think if history shows us anything globally, it's out of something like the pandemic that we're facing right now that we're going to see the greatest growth of entrepreneurship and successful entrepreneurs being born because of the necessity of being able to do that. And, you know, there's case study after case study of really large scale successful businesses that emerge in that way. And we've got one living here right now, SpeedX. He's a diagnostics and therapeutics company that was born out of the global financial crisis and J&J Labs in Sydney shutting down and the founders being made redundant. And while they paused for a moment and went, oh my God, what are we going to do? They had this moment of going, well, now's never been a better time to just try and give it a shot. And they now employ, you know, well over 100 people. They're busting out of space. They're a global company. They're doing millions of dollars of manufacturing on site. So I think what we're going to see is the answer to that in the next 12 to 18 months is going to be COVID is producing the most entrepreneurs, because we absolutely need them, and they're going to be coming out of the woodworks from every avenue and corner.
Do you think unemployment generates good entrepreneurs?
I think it creates an environment where it incentivizes people to kind of step up into that. I think there's a lot of policy conversation around like a job-ready graduate. That's not really a super important thing right now compared to sort of job-creating graduates. And you know, there's a really exciting batch of companies. We're seeing a really good example out of UNSW is a company called Forage. It used to be called Inside Sherpa. Started by UNSW students this year. In the middle of COVID, they raised a $13 million Series A out of the US. So, you know, I think the more that universities can be doing to create opportunities, whether that's alumni coming back, completely agree with Rohan that some of the highest potential founders are coming out of the alumni community because they do have a bit more work experience, a bit more networks and connections. But just like what Daizy was saying, part of our job is to connect people, is to make those connections and sort of find the people that are worth backing and help other people sort of leverage off that kind of signal of trust. You know, if we can put in the work to say, yeah, here are the really high potential founders coming out of our university, that gives other people that are interested in helping those entrepreneurs have confidence to back them and support them.
I think just to reinforce that point from David and from Sally Ann, insofar as it's one thing, I think, to create the environment for entrepreneurs. And I think that Daisy's, the work in schools and the universities are fantastic, but it really does take that full ecosystem support mechanism. So it is the programs that are offered by state and federal governments and ensuring that we're getting the right messages through in terms of the sort of broad programming and grant funding, but the industry connection, so providing opportunities for students and others to engage with corporate innovation and be incubated in those spaces. The alumni connections, because they have walked a different path and being able to come back and sometimes engaging with current students or themselves actually being involved in development of startups. So I do think that it's that whole of ecosystem approach, and we all play a really important role, but one of us can't really survive without the other. And so how do we continue to strengthen those links?
It's Mark Ryan from La Trobe University. Hi, everyone. Thanks for your comments so far. I really appreciate the opportunity for this forum. Thank you. Looking forward to more. I'd just like to really support, especially what Sally Ann just said. As a case study this year at La Trobe, one of La Trobe's key values is to support its community, especially regional Victoria. We put our money where our mouth is and invested ourselves in a small program where we wanted to select 20 businesses in regional Victoria to pick themselves up throughout COVID. We ended up getting 100 applications, and because of its success, state government picked up on our program and asked us to repeat it with their support twice in the next 6 months that have just occurred. So COVID is the answer, and also, Sally, necessity is the mother of invention. Given that success can be measured on have I got a job, can be a success, as opposed to have I got a balance sheet, I couldn't agree with you more. Thank you.
Okay, I'll throw to Tim's question from the chat about proportion of activity that you see in your startups that is the result of tech transfer, this research that's happening in your university that ends up becoming a startup. I'll say in our case, the undergrad enthusiasm for this, creating a job for themselves and getting something off the ground, and the technology enabled world that we live in, the number of problems there are to solve, the ability to solve them, the ability to reach people with those problems around the world, that creates a different dynamic where the kind of entrepreneurs you can create in large numbers, in our case, tend to be not the research-enabled ones. While research-enabled ones are wonderful as well, but they exist in much smaller numbers. I'm curious to know if other universities see similar things.
I'll add, in our experience in the last 5 years that I've been here, I've noticed there's also startups are a very small number of the full pool of potential entrepreneurs. The other is there's this group of students that still don't know that they can go get an ABN and become consultants while they're at uni. So there's a piece of education that needs to be done there, where they realize the rise of jobs. And so, for example, in my research, I realized between now and pre-COVID, 200,000 task-based jobs have been added to freelancer.com. And our students aren't really looking to list themselves on those platforms. And that is a type of freelancer entrepreneur. They have to go get an ABN, they have to manage their own pricing, they have to find their own clients, they have to deal with client satisfaction. It's different, but it's still entrepreneurial. So I think that is another area that we have been to look at, freelancing and helping students get into that, because they're far more likely to take that first step into getting their first freelance client on an ABN before they're about to dive into an actual, like a tech startup that's not for everyone. So it is still small as well. I just wanted to add that because I feel that's something we don't, universities don't address as much, this whole freelancer revolution that's coming, that's already happening, and we're not, like young Australians are not equipped for it in any way.
An interesting question, because what we see is certainly those that are based on university technology sometimes are lacking that real entrepreneurial spirit. So we have companies where there's great technology, but perhaps there's not people who are really willing to grab it and run with it as a viable standalone business. And so what we're forced to do then is try and bring people in to complement the deep research and knowledge skills. Certainly the ones that are based on technology developed at the university usually have a more differentiable position, so that they've got some core strong intellectual property. There's less of them. The ones that are based on students or alumni are usually great entrepreneurs, really enthusiastic, real go-getters, but perhaps their ideas or their core business model's not as strong.
Yeah, I think just exactly what was kind of mentioned, Rohan, about having that kind of entrepreneurial spirit. We've found that anecdotally with our last cohort of 10X alumni, 2 of them were research spin-outs, which was great. But we also found with the Peter Farrell Cup, which is an idea-based student-focused competition, the last 2 years winners were actually PhD candidates. And that's been quite successful. Though if you look broadly over the 400 startups we would support in a year, it would be a much smaller percentage. So the ones who are doing well and do find that spirit and get the right support do extremely well, but proportionally it's quite low.
Can I just add something about research commercialisation, because I think we make this the holy grail and the be all and end all of this of the conversation, and I think we actually need to broaden it and change it a little bit. So I think the ways of collaborating with universities on research and collaboration are far broader than spinning out the technology or licensing their technology. And to be really clear, as somebody who spent 13 years leading the R&D team at Google, sometimes you actually don't want to license the technology because it's way too early, or it's not commercializable, or the investment to do that is really far. Now, it doesn't mean it's not valid research and it's not great research, but it's actually may not always be the best mechanism. So we need universities to do the blue sky research. We need them to publish. We need to kind of be driving things forward and be very futuristic and sort of, blue sky in what they're doing. We also need to have other mechanisms like contracted research, which might be a little bit closer to where the commercial reality is and solving the problem that some of our startups, and particularly our SMEs, and there's some amazing programs that are happening. We have a tech voucher program that operates in New South Wales, and I know UNSW, there's a lot of people that have gone through using that. I know all of our other universities in New South Wales are part of this program as well, but it's an amazing mechanism of actually closing the gap between a startup that could be founded by anybody, anywhere doing something, but actually connecting with researchers and actually solving a problem that they need to accelerate and grow their business. And they could be a scale-up business or a growth stage business. So that's actually incredibly important. And our universities are really, really good at it. And we absolutely need to see a lot more of it. But I think we need to fundamentally understand when we're talking about science and engineering businesses, we're talking about deep tech businesses in particular. So I'm not talking about everything that comes out of a university, but the deep tech side of it. The commercialization pathway for that is a minimum pretty much 10 years. It's a really long haul, it's capital intensive. And so we actually shouldn't expect massive volumes of that. We should expect smaller volumes of really high quality, phenomenal, companies to come out, which we do see in Australia. And we should see a greater volume of that contractual collaborative research where an SME comes with a problem and finds a researcher and they work on it. So it's not a spin out, it's not necessarily a license agreement, it's IP is all sort of, contracted and negotiated up front. But actually that's a really valid piece of work and how we need to think about it. And I think when you start to talk about it holistically of what that looks like in entrepreneurship, it's really, really exciting. I know every time I go to KCA, and Rohan presents nearly every year. So I hear sort of what's going on. When you hear about what's actually happening and some of the work that's going on there, that's stuff that we don't hear about in the broader population and in the broader community. And so we make it down to this one isolated metric, which is a useful metric and we should do better at and we should do more of it. But it's definitely not the sum of what's on the table and what the opportunity is for Australia, because it's so much broader, it's so much richer, and there's so much more that we can do.
Yeah, agreed. I think that kind of impactful graduates, impactful research, impactful company creation as outputs of a university.
Can I say,
and particularly, sorry, Daisy, go ahead.
Sorry, just with commercialization and entrepreneurship, when I first joined the university, this is an interesting space because commercialization departments of universities have been established for years, and then entrepreneurship has emerged. And it's interesting, in some of the universities, the entrepreneurship is coming out of the commercialization side. In some, it's very, very separate. So it's been interesting. I think there's a whole part of it has been an internal shift in culture and education to say, here's what we as the entrepreneurship program at the university do. It's not all about spin outs as well. It's about cultivating an environment where entrepreneurs can thrive. And we've had researchers who've come up with startups, but it's not out of their particular research that they're doing, but they've still become entrepreneurs and we still support them. Whereas that would be something that wouldn't particularly be supported by the commercialization department of the university or the traditional way that it's seen. So I just want to point that out because we spent quite a bit of time clarifying the misunderstandings around sort of IP debates, when really we're just trying to create a culture where we have startups coming up rather than fighting over whose IP is whose. But this is a real concern that researchers have. They come to us and they say, we're not sure how to approach this IP conversation. And for us, it's like, well, we'll just link you to mentors to help you keep growing whatever it is that you want to build, because we want to have more of you, as opposed to start an adversarial conversation at the beginning. And I don't think we talk about it openly enough as well.
And just, sorry, I'm just going to add to that and riff off what Daizy said, because I think one of the other assumptions is that all academics should be entrepreneurs. And I'm like, why? If everybody's an entrepreneur and everybody's a founder, we've got no one to work for these scale-up companies. So we shouldn't all be entrepreneurs. We don't need to all be entrepreneurial. Some of us need to be deep researchers. Some of us need to be entrepreneurs. but it's not, we make the conversation so binary in how we approach this. And instead of going, let's be all of those things, let's have the full spectrum of that. Let's allow some people to be amazing researchers and some people to be amazing entrepreneurs, but let's reduce the friction to following whichever pathway that you want to go down. We had a great conversation with Michael Biersick yesterday from Q Control. And we literally talked about this, about, you know, what the difference is. And he's a research-based business. You know, it's a spin out from a university doing quantum control systems, but it's this kind of difference in culture, difference in behavior, difference in how you flow, and actually like what is the balance of having both of those in his business and what people are suited for. So we kind of get into binary of it has to be all this, and it's all about startups and it's all about entrepreneurs, where it's actually we need the whole system. Otherwise we become imbalanced and nobody thrives.
Sorry, can I just pick up this IP question? Because there's obviously in the chat that, you know, this IP thing about universities being difficult to deal with on an IP, generally across the population, there's a big misunderstanding about what is IP. I don't know how many of you, I'm sure everyone on the call has had an experience of teams, young teams who are not university employees, but are students or alumni, go through programs and say they've got the best idea that's going to make $1 million, but they can't tell you what it is because it's their IP and they want to protect it. General misconception out there about what is IP, and that is a real fundamental issue, not just for universities, but for early stage entrepreneurs. They need to really think about what is it that they have that is a differentiable position, what access to knowledge, what access to resources, what access to patentable or protectable IP do they have that really makes a difference for them, so that they can then engage in sensible conversations about how they take the opportunity forward.
Isn't it the role of the universities to educate them on that and to help them understand what is IP, what isn't, and then to help them go forward regardless?
Absolutely. Yes. I think all the programs should have a role in trying to build the knowledge base on what is IP, but it's not just university research staff that have a problem with that. It's early stage entrepreneurs in general. They just have a misconception about what is protectable intellectual property.
Yeah.
Fantastic point. Melissa, I wanted to throw to you as someone at the centre of an incredible innovation district up there in Macquarie Park with surrounding companies. How do you find the engagement with those companies from a research or startup perspective?
I suppose it's up and down, really. I don't think that there's any secret sauce to engaging with corporates. I think they're all very different. They have their own what they're wanting to achieve, whether they do any R&D onshore. A lot of the people, I mean, we're known as Pill Hill up here. We're also the most innovative postcode in Australia, which is an interesting fact I found out when I joined Macquarie, having more IP registrations than any postcode in Australia, which was, you know, a great thing for us. But engagement with corporates is a struggle for universities. I know in my lifetime in a corporate, similar to Sally Ann's, it was a question of how do we engage with them? And they're all different in how they engage with businesses. It's not like you go to a shop front and you can work out how to engage with a university. It just doesn't work like that. So I think we have, you know, different individuals that are responsible for engagement with corporates. So we have a corporate engagement team like most universities will. We have our research teams that all of our faculties here or all our schools have people that actually represent them as well. So it's quite a complex web, as you would expect in any matrix organisation. I think what we try to do is educate our researchers one-on-one and within training about how to engage with corporates. So we're actually doing a lot of programs around that. It's as basic as how to network. How do you actually talk? They're not from business backgrounds. They're basically institutionalized. They've never come outside of an education system and outside of into the real world, so to speak, or into the business context. We also have just launched this year a researchers impact program, which is also about the commercialisation pathway. So we actually take them through all the different things that are options for them and how they also understand their IP position, which is really critical as well. And I think I can't really add much more to what everybody said around that, the complexities of engaging with universities and also how entrepreneurs and innovators are quite different. So innovators invent and entrepreneurs leverage. Some of you might get a Venn diagram that there's a very slither of individuals that cross over both of those areas, but more often than not, from my experience, there's not many. So yeah, that would be.
Murray, can I add insofar as I just think that this is going to be such an important conversation moving forward. I mean, we're already seeing that in terms of government policy, but the importance of being able to engage with industry as a part of everything that we do. Certainly, and at UQ, I mean, we've looked at a range of different ways to connecting with industry, from innovation challenges, where we've actually had corporates come in with their problems and creating teams, and then obviously providing solutions. And the great thing about that is that it gives it an authenticity and a credibility, in addition to being able to access mentors and experts that are right at the coalface. So there's that. But then there's also the work, and just picking up what Melissa was saying in terms of providing additional pathways and employment opportunities for students. So for our PhD scholars in particular, we've been looking at how do we ensure that they are ready for careers with industry, because so many are still following a really traditional research training pathway that sort of led towards universities or research institutes, and there's just not the roles there for them. And also it's just such a shame in terms of what they could be contributing to our economic growth. And so that's going to be a big priority, working collaboratively with our commercialisation office and our graduate school, as well as a number of faculties in their research teams, to look at how can we build a program for PhD scholars that has elements around understanding commercialisation of research, understanding the entrepreneurial mindset and capabilities and tools, but then just direct connects into what are industry looking for, how can you sell your skills, how can you pitch your research and activities, but be prepared for that landscape. So I think that there's a lot more work that we need to be doing, but I think that the entrepreneurship teams within the universities will play an important role there.
Like, this is the thing. So like, why do what we do? When people talk about universities, I think a lot of people still look at them as just places to learn or places to research. And I think the future relevance of universities needs to be about more than that. And they do those things well, and they will always do those things well. But where else in Australia would you find this group of people all spending millions of dollars each on trying to talk to people that don't want to talk to them and change what they're doing with their lives? Melissa, Jessica, everyone here, like Jessica, when you're engaging with those 14,000 people, why are you doing it?
Well, I think that, I mean, it's for all the reasons everyone else is here. It's starting from how do we plant that seed in the high schools around the different paths that people have in terms of creating their own career trajectories, through to supporting our students that have just got a really great idea and don't know how to necessarily, what business model is going to work best, or how they can create the networks that they need to be successful, through to ensuring that there's relevance of the university. I mean, we all have to fight against those conversations that, you know, universities are too far removed from the needs of society, too far removed from what industry is really looking for. I mean, personally, I think that's garbage. But it takes people like us to continue to have those conversations, to connect, to show the talent that we have within our walls, and to find the best ways to bring that to life. And sometimes that's through the commercialisation pathway, but sometimes it's around sort of founders and startups, research consulting, other forms. And I think that there isn't a one size fits all. And so I think everybody in this room has all those conversations with the thousands of people, because we're trying to find the right way for the stakeholders that we're working with. And I think it's a really fun pursuit to do that. So.
I also think we have to recognise that this is a new space for universities, and it's a quantum shift, because we're actually promoting the pathway of self-determination. And I mean, ultimately, we teach expertise in a particular vertical. We don't do, I suppose, what is now the T-shaped graduate. So we're actually looking to educate more, and I think that's where the entrepreneurial space is more or less teaching what they often term as soft skills, which I don't believe them to be soft skills. I think that undermines their value. It's almost like being emotional, or you're too female. All of those lovely things that women get all the time. And I think that entrepreneurship and self-determination is a legitimate pathway. And I think universities are starting to understand that. But also, in saying that, the education that we provide here at Macquarie and what we do with our students, as well as our entrepreneurs and our researchers, is that the education that we give them is practical and applied, which is also very different for what universities traditionally do. So we are almost a Trojan horse that are bringing in a different way of thinking and doing into the university sector. and ultimately will change the face of how universities educate and what we value over, you know, concept learning, so to speak. And I think that's a great thing. And if we can actually embed that within our universities and encourage that, then that will put our country in a much better position than it currently is, particularly as we watch our government slowly dismantle the university sector that we see at the moment with the lack of funding and support that we see. Sorry, I'll get off my soapbox.
No, soapboxes are good.
I was going to say,
Stick
it's a great soapbox, Melissa. And I think one of the things I would just add to that soapbox, I think for all of us too, is to recognise what we do bring to the table, but also not try and bring everything to the table, because we can't be all things to everybody. And I think that's one of the things that we sometimes look to. We look to our universities to be all things to absolutely everybody. And it's a really unfair call, because we don't do that to every industry. We don't do that to every player. So what we actually really need to do is find the ways to connect the pieces of the ecosystem that are expert at different parts of things, as well as we do need to make changes. We absolutely need to all be transformative, but, you know, recognize what our expertise is and bring it to the table, and find the adjacencies with those that are experts in complementary things, and remove the frictions in between. There's a phrase that we talk about when raising children. You know, it takes a village to raise a child. Well, it takes an entire ecosystem to raise a startup. And if I think about, you know, where we're at right now, you know, Rachel has been hosting Tech23 for years, and I think that's an incredibly valuable and important role. You know, Tech23 is an incredibly important part of the ecosystem. Is it a university? No. Is it an incubator and accelerator? No. But it's a connector between those things, between venture capital, between opportunities and customers, and it's a piece that we need to do. Should any of us try and be Tech23 or replicate it? Oh, heck no. You know, what we need to do is find ways to support and nurture it and make it the showcase for deep tech companies in Australia. And I think that's what, if we can focus on the transformations that we need to do as individual organizations, but then really actually seek out those collaboration points and remove the frictions between them and pass people through the system, that's when we start to see, you know, we're not going to see a massive acceleration of really scalable, massive companies, because it takes time. It takes time to go from 11 engineers to 800. It actually took 12 years for me to do that in Sydney at Google. So, you know, it takes time to do that. But when we actually, you know, when we remove some of those frictions, we can be more successful at it, and we can have a higher volume coming through, and we start to really build the sustainability into the system that we desperately need.
Murray, I'd just like to jump in if possible. I've been listening intently and thoroughly enjoying all of these observations. Something I'd like to just chat about, I guess specifically, something that we're seeing, and maybe something that we have a responsibility to address. I think it's in 2017, the Atlassian co-founder, he mentioned that attracting talent and retaining that talent is one of the biggest challenges facing startups. And I actually think that that's probably accelerated. I think we have a bit of an execution problem within our early stage startups within Australia. And I do see that as a bit of an opportunity for us, and a little bit of a challenge as well. And we're seeing that, I guess, in the way in which we're developing these enterprise capabilities. And you said it right, they're not soft skills, but these really transferable enterprise capabilities. We know about the reports. We're addressing that through our programming and through our skill development, which is awesome. My perspective is slightly shifting though, and I think that where we're maybe dropping the ball, where there's an opportunity, is to link in to more of those harder technical capabilities, so we can support the people that can execute, that can implement within those startups and those environments. We're seeing a lot through kind of our science and engineering space within RMIT, that the students coming through are excellent. They've got excellent capabilities, some of the better programs in the world. And we're seeing that there's no real pathways into the startup ecosystem for them, or they're not seeing those pathways. So they're more inclined to go into a graduate role or into a more corporate space, because that's what they deem to be the best opportunity. So I think there's a bit of a role there for us to play in engaging those types of students. And for them, as the question that came up in the chat, I think it was from perhaps from Peter, I believe, around, you know, how do we engage our MBA students with our tech students? I think that is one of the biggest challenges that we're facing. So I just want to add that to the conversation. I know that we're all probably addressing that in our own different ways, but I think that's a really important journey for us to all go on in the next little while. And I think the COVID experience has kind of accelerated that as well.
That's the thing, like when Atlassian or other people talk about a lack of talent, I think in a way they have to take some responsibility for fostering that talent. And if they want people that are experienced in startups, then where are the startups that are those kind of learning experiences for the graduates to go into? And maybe it's not their problem, but it can't this magically happen as and Google's the same.
I'm just going to jump in. To be fair to Atlassian and Google, they do a heck of a lot to foster the talent. The shortage has been in computer science graduates in this country for years and years and years. And both companies have done a tremendous amount of work nationally and internationally to change that ratio. And both companies take in over 100 paid internships every single summer. So they are absolutely committed, as is Google, as is Canva, as is the growth tech stage companies, to doing that. But what they're looking for, let's be really serious, they're looking for computer science graduates. That's what they need. They need software engineers.
I'll add to that,
they can't
Sally,
fill themselves with graduates.
No,
we've got 14,000 engineering students and 100 interns.
But I will
back
that with Sally, and it's not the number of students that you may have doing it. When I looked at the numbers at UOW, which is at the time when I joined the University of Wollongong, graduated the most IT graduates in Australia, over 70% of those students were international. They weren't local. So we're basically training a whole bunch of people in that vertical that go back home. And that's something that I was completely shocked about and couldn't understand. But ultimately, if they're not interested in it, they're not doing it, and then we don't have the graduates.
Yeah, I'm getting the wrap up from Rachel.
Oh, there you go.
Sorry, Rohan, there's one point I want to finish on that. On this call, the napkin math is probably close to 500,000 students that we can affect. And also in a year when all the universities are suffering financially, the fact that we've all still got jobs and portfolios, I think is wonderful, but it's been a difficult year. If you could all have anything to make your impact in 2021 on these 500,000 plus students and everyone else that you work with better, what would it be?
Open up the borders.
That would be wonderful.
More availability of seed funding.
Another building. I'm full. I've got companies that are hiring. I need another building.
For us, I think it would be continued connect to what's happening in the curriculum, so that things aren't completely held separately. So what they do in the classroom isn't completely divorced from what they do outside the classroom. And so we've got to find better ways to integrate there.
I think that's huge, echoing what Jessica said. I think there's such just encouragement from the academics that they engage with to have faith in the entrepreneurial ideas. I know when I was a student, I remember going to a lecturer talking about a startup and they said, that's not very academic. I don't know anything about that. And weren't able to provide any help and said, don't you have assignments sort of due? So I think it's like that encouragement and for academics to also understand that entrepreneurship is a thing and that they should be referring the students on to the entrepreneurship area of the university. But on top of that, they should also know some of the basics, particularly in business degrees. Often we do have pure academics teaching entrepreneurial subjects, and we do need more guest lecturers and more sort of understanding of what it means to actually start a business within the university. So I think that's something that will really be useful for students to have that knowledge in the uni from the academic side as well, not just in whoever's in commercialization.
I guess for us, it's to continually kind of push the envelope within the university and try to continue to break down some of those barriers, play that kind of internal disruption role, which we've done this year. And some of those barriers are coming down this year in particular. We're seeing opportunities for collaboration across the uni have been much easier, and there are more of them. And so more down that path, looking at how do we engage multidisciplinary talent, how do we support different areas of the university with enterprise capabilities and entrepreneurial capabilities. I think it's just breaking down those barriers and thinking about what a future university looks like. I think Activator plays a really key role in that at RMIT.
I agree with Sally. I think we need more space. I'm running out of space as well, Sally, because I've got companies that are scaling. And so we've gone with it. One of our companies had 2 at the beginning of COVID, it's now got 15. So we need more space. And I think there's accelerators everywhere. There's not a lot of incubators. You cannot just put someone through an accelerator program, throw money at them and expect that they're going to just know what to do and that they don't need support anymore. That's just not the case. The more support we can provide, and particularly Sally would understand this, Sally Ann, in relation to deep tech, it needs 10 years of incubation, not put them through a 3-month accelerator program, throw 20 grand at them and expect them to be an overnight success. It just doesn't work like that. And even smaller businesses need that extra opportunity to pivot and to have that support while they do it. And I think the government should start providing more seed capital and not so much grants. I think some of the bars that they put in place are too high. And a lot of people, and a lot of these companies aren't going to have money flowing in the door to provide that match funding that they need. So I think there's more opportunity for less grants, more seed funding with less strings attached to it. Thank you.
Melissa, let's go get a building together.
Yeah, man, we need more buildings. Hey, we've got some stuff out here at Macquarie. Did you want some space out here?
Yes,
you can
please.
Spread your wings.
I'd love a building. I'll take any buildings that are being given to me. Thank you.
Well, interestingly enough, we actually have some of the developers out here that are offering innovation space to us. So if they put innovation space or provide space that's what they deem as community space, they get to add another 1 or 2 floors to their building. So it's really good economics for them. So maybe we need to get together about that.
Let's chat.
Rachel, I'll throw to you in a second. My call to action for everyone is go off and share what universities are doing. I don't think universities talk about what they're doing themselves in a way that the public understand. And it is changing. The perception I had of a university before joining UTS was very different to what it is when I'm neck deep in UTS. They're not.
Is it being good or bad, Murray?
It's much better than I thought. I thought it would be good, but the amount of activity you can make happen in a university is incredible. And you have a relatively captive audience at a critical age usually, or when they're redefining their careers or when they're exploring new ideas. That audience is an incredible audience and an incredible organization to actually not just make graduates, not just make research, but make companies that can have some impact and help Australia to recover. So spread the word. But thank you very much, Rachel.
Oh, thank you, Murray, and to all the contributors. Such a generous conversation. I think you all should feel very proud of what you're doing. And I know it's been a tough year. I especially want to call out Macquarie, UNSW, ANSTO, Cicada, RMIT and Curtin that have helped with sort of the background to this circle. I wish we'd sort of done it earlier in the year, but I think maybe we should look at doing it, as you say, Murray, a bit more often. I know we're overloading some of you today. We've got Accelerate happening this afternoon. If you're a university on the line and you're not coming and you don't know anything about it, just ping me now and I'll make sure that you get into that session, which is kicking off at 1 p.m. So if tummies are rumbling, maybe eat before we kick off like that at 1 p.m. That's only for universities and it won't be recorded. So this, though, is getting recorded. And what I would suggest is we'll cut it and make it look nice, put it up on the circles, and please share far and wide, because I think there was so much interesting stuff, and there's so many more questions that I'm sure people would like to ask you. So maybe, yeah, we'll revisit this in a circle next year. So thank you all very much. Thank you for zooming in.